How can someone balance reality of a project?
Implement the strategies.
This is Soundview's Executive Insights. My name is Andrew Clancy, Senior Editor with Soundview. I'm here today with Michael Araten, the President and CEO of NEX Brands. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Andrew.
NEX, it's such an interesting product. When you describe it to someone who's not familiar with it, what do you say? How do you tell them what NEX is?
Well, NEX is really the 21st century combination of Tinker Toys and Erector sets, so it's the best of both worlds. What we really focus on is building worlds kids love. So we take whatever worlds the kids want to live in, whatever age they're in, bring that to life so that they can recreate what's sort of in their head already.
NEX, because of the creativity that's at the core of it, that makes it such an amazing construction toy. Are there methods that you use at the company to help inspire the creativity that comes up with those ideas? There
are a number of things we do. You know, we like to say we're inspiring creativity by design. And so what we focus on is what's going to be appropriate for the right age child. So for preschool, for example, there's a lot more open-ended play. And by that I mean anything is right. So we're giving a lot of idea sheets. So just for example, a rod and a connector could be a flower, could be a lollipop, could be a baseball bat, you know, for a next 2-3-year-old kid. So that imagination. As we get a little bit older, we'll give them launching off points. So if you want to build a roller coaster at age 9 or 10, we'll give you that launching off point, give you the instructions to do that, and then move on and go forward. And then everything in between. You know, Mario Kart's a good example of where we'll set up the track sets that look just like they came out of the game, and then kids launch from there and go on to build their own unique things, like you might have done with the old train sets from 100 years ago.
Does the timing vary in terms of how long it takes to come up with an idea for a set, or where does the inspiration come from?
The inspiration comes from a number of places. We're focused very much on figuring out where kids' heads are. So we do a fair amount of consumer research. When I say consumer, kid research. A little bit of mom research too, because mom ends up buying most of the stuff. So we do a lot of mom and kid research, see where they are, what they're engaged in, what parts of play is appealing to them, and what worlds are they coming out of? Are they coming out of movies? Are they coming out of television? Are they coming out of digital media, etc.? And as we like to say, go after the biggest possible audience on a global scale. Then our development timeline varies, but typically we're working about a year to a year and a half in advance. So we've finalized the 2013 line. We're working on 2014 now, and part of that is driven by our own supply chain, and part of that's driven by the decision makers at our retail partners. So Walmart, Target, and Toys R Us have to make their decisions far enough in advance so they can get their own shelf stocked. So we're working backwards from largely our retailers' timelines.
There have to be moments in that process where there may be a point where an idea gets stuck, or the creativity just isn't flowing exactly as you want it to be. What happens in those situations to remove the barriers?
Well, we've got a fair amount of history at this, so that doesn't happen a whole lot. But what we end up doing, actually, the simplest technique we have, is we just put it away for a few days. And what we have found is we put it away for a few days, we have the design team work on other things, and they come back at it a few days later, and they're generally unstuck. If that doesn't work, if we're having that hard of a time coming up with what the concept should be for a particular toy, it might not be a great concept. So sometimes it just sort of says, okay, that's telling us that this probably isn't an easy get for either mom or the kid or the retailer, and why are we doing it? So generally, we'll come at it one of those couple of ways.
So you're almost your own first line of defense before it even comes out to the open market.
I think we're our worst critics. Yeah. We do a whole pretty comprehensive, what we call internal comping process, to sort of go up against our own previous products, and then what the competition's coming out with a whole checklist of items. How many parts? What age is it for? What's the theme? Does it have a motor? Does it not have a motor? How much movement is in it? How big does it build? Does it have the right amount of play value compared to the competition? And so we have a pretty disciplined approach on that, because we want to make sure that the play value is there not only for the child, but so that the mom, when she gets home, feels like she got a good value for her dollar.
I want to explore that you said about the internal process. I want to explore that a little more, because there was a blog post that you wrote for the company where you had stated that you really like to involve people from virtually every discipline when it comes to design or making a decision.
Right.
Can you tell me about that and how that's given NEX an advantage?
Well, we all see the world only through our own experience and lens and where we are in our sort of journey of life here. So what I have found over time is the old expression that 2 heads are better than 1 works when you have 6 heads better than 1 too. So what I look at is that if I have our head of operations and our head of design, our head of marketing, and our head of international sales all in a room together, they're all dealing with different issues every day primarily. So then when they get into the design sphere, they all have their nice perspective. And so it's a sort of microcosm of what's going on out in the world, because we're dealing with all kinds of people that are going shopping at whether it is Target or Toys R Us or whatever every day. So their life experiences are all different, and we're getting a small version of that around the table here. And I think that provides for us a nice balanced approach.
And that creativity that we spoke about, that absolutely goes full circle, because it's such a connection with the audience as well. Can you tell us about the Connexpert search and what's involved in that, and what that gives to the company?
Well, it gives a couple of things. One of the things, the reason we started it is we started getting, it sort of came from talking to kids and consumers. Kids were sending in these pictures of these fantastic things that we would never have come up with, taking 10 sets that they bought and then making these, just extremely extraordinary things, 30-foot high roller coasters, Golden Gate bridges that are 100 feet long, crazy stuff. And so we said, well, wait a minute, there's got to be a way to honor these kids and learn from them at the same time. So we said, why don't we do a actual Connexpert search where we'll go out to everybody, because if there's some group of these, there's probably a lot more, and let's go find them. And now we want to find them in the different age groups as well. So what's important to a 6-7-year-old is a little, different from what's important to a 10-year-old and everything in between. And so that's why we do it. It's also part of our core value is giving back to the community. And so that's why we tied giving college scholarship money to those Connexpert searches. So we figure if you or a child are so impassioned about something that we're bringing to the world, if we can find a way to give back, we'll do that. And so it ties in nicely with our core values, and we're learning about what's important to kids, and there's a nice feedback loop that goes sort of every year.
Well, I wanted to ask you about building that community that is associated with the Connect product, because if you go to your website, you'll see very clearly that there's an area for children, there's an area for parents, there's an area for teachers.
Right.
What was the thought process there, and how did you develop each of those parts of this greater community?
Yeah, as we thought about over the years, it's been an evolution, so it didn't always start that way. But as we thought about who our audiences were, and at the core of it, we're sort of putting on a show every day for our audience, and our content is our stuff that we make. So kids are obviously the core of the audience. If the kids aren't happy, nothing else matters. We said, well, we got to have a kids club then, somewhere they can go share ideas. We can share ideas with them. We can give them bonus building ideas. We can give them games to play. We can enhance their experience because, as we like to say, the experience doesn't end at the box. We like to have it come back again to the website and back to the box and more ideas, because our view is the parts will last forever, and they do because of the stuff we use. And so let's let them continue to build forever, work on their imagination, and then hopefully occasionally buy some more. Then we said, okay, that's good for the kids. That's the core of it. But what are the other sort of influencers around what the kids are doing? Clearly parents are part of that. And we've pretty early on formed an education division, so we knew the teachers were part of that. So we've got different sorts of products that are tied to school curriculum that are in a few thousand schools around the U.S. and around the world right now. And so what we do there is say, all right, well, the teachers' needs are a little bit different. They need lesson plans. They need ideas for, indoor recess when it rains, like it happens to be today, those kinds of things. And so let's give the teachers the things they need, let's give the parents the things that they need, and let's give the kids the things that they need. And all those needs intersect in some different ways, but they're all a little bit unique. And so we thought those were the core audiences that we serve.
With those three audiences, do you find that they communicate with the company in different ways? Does one group prefer reaching out to you on your Facebook page? Does another email you photos? Is there a difference in how they connect?
It's evolving. I would say that the use of social media is sort of ubiquitous at this point. So, teachers, parents, kids, everybody's using those tools. But definitely, we're not getting any emails from kids. We're getting only social media, use from kids. We're getting emails still from teachers and parents, and I think that's a little bit of a generational thing. It's also a little bit easier to communicate with us through email if you're a parent or a teacher, because Facebook's monitored in a different way. You can get pretty direct communication with us on the email chain. So I think that's part of it, is sort of the way we set ourselves up. But in addition to that, if you think about it, the teacher and parent page, especially the teacher sort of sections, are a little bit more professional focused. And professionals tend not to communicate through instant messaging on Facebook. They tend to communicate through either email or calling us or whatever. So I think part of that is just the nature of the relationship that we have with those different audiences.
Let's touch on parents for a second, because they're so much more intensely involved and more vocal, I think, than in any other previous generation. Are there unique keys to connecting with parents, or is there anything about they present unique challenges to the company in terms of how you interact with them?
You know, it's hard to put a broad swath across all parents, but there are probably 3 to 5 different kinds of demographics that we focus on. But primarily what we're trying to do for parents is just help them understand the benefits of building generally for their child, the benefits that our products in particular give them, and because parents are busy, I'm one myself, what is appropriate from our line for their child. So don't buy a big roller coaster for your 6-year-old. They're going to be frustrated. It's beyond their current level of development. And we prefer that you buy something appropriate for them so that they can have success, and we'll get them later when they're 8 or 9 or 10. So those are the kinds of practical things we try to do. In addition to that, we sometimes share just broader information, safety tips at Halloween time, Christmas time, things like that, things about camping, all those kinds of things that just sort of give a little bit of a rounder play, because we know that they're going to be doing other things other than playing with our building toys, and so we'd like to see if we can give them some help in those areas as well.
When it applies to Connects itself, do you find that you're more proactive about talking to parents about the safety aspect rather than have them come to you about it? Do you want to put it up front?
We do. I mean, we've had a great track record. We, apply all the most stringent standards to our stuff, and I'm going to knock, we've never had a safety issue with our products, which is great. But it is one of the concerns for Mom. And the other thing that's a concern for her, and another area that we communicate with, is just the ability to deal with the germs. The one benefit of plastic is that it's easy to Purell with it. And so put in the dishwasher and those kinds of things. So just those simple little things that you sort of, as you put yourself in the minds of just a busy mom with a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, what are you doing every day? Just that little tip saves her some time and engenders some loyalty with us, because we're thinking about that. The other way we're communicating with parents is through our mom blog network. So we've got a network of about 150 mom bloggers around the country, and the way we use that network is we give them all of our new products to review before it hits the marketplace, so that they can review them for their audiences and say, this is why we've enjoyed it and it's good for you. And when they've occasionally not enjoyed it, we've gone back and modified the product so that it's better as we iterate it forward. And I think that's been very helpful for us.
That word of mouth obviously is preached by so many marketers as being the one thing you want, but Connects has really made it a point to connect with people on a level that as you say, they get the product before anyone else.
Right.
They're bound to go out to the masses and talk more about it.
That's right. And you always run that risk that they won't love it, but so far they've loved it almost all the time.
And another person who loved it was Laurie Schacht, who had done a piece for the Today Show recently as we're filming this, about Connects being one of the 10 best American-made toys.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing when I reviewed that list is that Connects share space with some other names like Crayola and Slinky, who also have connections here in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Is there a sense of kinship among these manufacturers mixed with the natural competition that comes with being in the same space? Sure.
Well, the manufacturers that were listed on the Today Show were all in different parts sort of the toy and arts and crafts space. So do we generally compete because there's only so much money and so many people, out there and so much they're going to spend on toys? Sure. But we don't really view Crayola as our competition. If you're going to buy a crayon set, that's for a different use. It's a different purpose. You can't draw with Connects yet. Maybe we should work on that. But so that we're just very, very broadly competitive. On that scale, we're also competitive with video games and competitive with board games. So we tend not to think of it in that way. We view our competition primarily as the other building set companies. And that's really what it is. What I'm very proud of is that we're the only building toy company that makes stuff here. 95% of the parts are made here, and over 2/3 of the finished goods themselves. We're one of probably only a handful of companies that make toys on a mass scale in the United States. So Crayola's one, there's a couple of other companies in the Midwest, and some of the other companies that were even highlighted on the Today Show were small regional companies that you can't find at Target and Toys R Us and Walmart and everywhere else, or Amazon, because they don't have the scale to be able to do that. So they're more artisans, which is great, but it's hard to find. So It's a differentiator for us. It's become very important to Mom, both here and around the world. In fact, we're going to start exporting into China in the fourth quarter of this year in a special Made in America section on the largest, it's sort of the Amazon of China. It's called Taobao, the Tmall in China. And they have a special Made in America section because their consumers would rather buy stuff made here than there, which is sort of a funny way it's all cycling around.
That was something that evolved over the tenure of your leadership, though, did it not? You were able to bring more of the manufacturing back to the United States.
It did. As we looked at ourselves at the end of '08, as the Great Recession was really in full force, and we had to make some hard choices about how we were going to do things going forward, part of our culture, again, and maybe it's because we're a family business, is that we want to help our local community where we can. And so then we thought, okay, well, if we make more here, we'll keep the people we have, we'll hire more people over time, and the ripple effects of that, all the people that we deal with, the vendors, etc. And so we said, okay, we just decided to do it. We just said, we think we can do it, and we think we can be profitable at it. Then we forced ourselves to look at the supply chain and see what all the different elements were and what really the total supply chain cost is. So what's interesting, if you look at manufacturing, is that China in particular, not that I'm picking on China, but they're the largest manufacturing base in the world other than here, their only real advantage is labor. So the way we went at the puzzle was looking at, what are the other components of dealing with China? Well, you've got to ship stuff across the ocean. That costs time and money, which means you're tying up capital inventory. You need higher safety stocks of inventory because it's coming from overseas, so you have to be able to do that to not disappoint your retail customers. You've got double management, because then you've got to have people there and people here. You always lose a day in communication because there's 12 hours different. You're also losing some communication because as good as they are at English, and they are, the nuances aren't always there. There's the additional travel costs. We've got to send people there to do approvals. There's additional testing costs. So with all of that stuff, that was probably a good 8 to 10% of cost that we were incurring that we had never really thought about before. So we said, okay, so if we can get within 10%, we're good. Then we said, can we do even better than that? That's when we started investing even more in automation in our manufacturing facility. So that allowed us to do packaging of our parts in unique ways so that we could do that with much less people. So although we have more people than we had 3 years ago, we're running 105 presses with 5 operators. So that's the way we're able to really compete on a global scale, is we take as much of the labor component, which is really their only advantage, off the table. So you make that a relatively small percentage of the finished goods cost, and you've got a winning formula.
It's amazing the thought process that went into that to come to that end. Has anyone approached you about it within your contacts in the manufacturing community about ways to make that happen at their facility? Has anyone kind of sought you out?
We've talked a little bit about that. We've actually formed a little bit of a manufacturing consortium we're based in Montgomery County here, in Montgomery and Bucks County outside of Philadelphia, and we've got about 50 companies in it now, focused first on really employee training. Because the other big thing that you need as you're growing is people who can actually do the work, and it's not your grandfather's manufacturing. You're not at a line turning a screw to the right all day long. You need engineering, you need math skills, you don't necessarily need an engineering degree, but you need a combination of hands ability is addition to brain ability. So it is something different every day. You're solving problems every day. You're operating computer-controlled equipment every day. So it's a different level of kind of person that we're looking for. So we've partnered up with the local tech schools and trade schools, and we're doing an education outreach out to the local community to tell middle schoolers and high schoolers, if you don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, not that I have anything against them, it's okay. There's some great well-paying jobs out there that you can make a good living and have what was the American middle class that sort of we've all been arguing about over the last couple of years here what to do with. So I'm happy that we're able to do that. It was sort of what we had in mind when we started down this path, was we're going to be able to help our local community. And I'm hopeful that we can also be a beacon for others, because if you can do it with toys, which is a pretty down and dirty commoditized business, you can do it with anything. And so it only gets easier if you're in a higher value kind of product line, like a medical equipment company or a small computer company or whatever you might be making.
And what are the odds that those skilled workers that you need in the future, there's probably a good chance that many of them probably played with Connect
Right.
when they were children.
Yeah, we are trying to help ourselves. We have a pretty robust internship program here. We're just finishing up this summer's internship program. I think we had 9 or 10 people floating around, and they're from different backgrounds. Some are from FIT, some are from Carnegie Mellon and Lehigh University, some are from high schools, and they all just really love to build. And then we get them in here and we let them have fun and we see who has the best attitude. And when they are ready for a full-time workforce, we're going to have some people available, which will be fun.
Let's go back to the manufacturing for a second, because it's part of the sister company, the Araten group,
right?
Aside from the connection to the founders, who are the Glickman family, tell us about the shared commitment that you have to the environmental responsibility, and can you list some of the highlights in terms of your green initiative?
Happy to. So the Araten group is a plastic injection molder. For those of you who might not know exactly what that is, it's fancy Jell-O mold making. So we make molds out of steel. Each little hole in the mold is called a cavity. You fill it with plastic, you melt it, you cool it, you get parts. It is enormously complex to actually do all of that, but that's all that it looks like when you're walking through the factory. So what we decided, again, was that we've invested in automation, and another big way to drive the bottom line is to eliminate waste. So the business purpose is we're eliminating waste. The core value is we want to do as little harm to the environment as possible. The two work hand in hand together. So for example, we changed out all of the lights from the old fluorescents to the compact fluorescents. They use literally 10% of the energy of the older ones. They're cooler, which means you're using less energy on heating and cooling, and they last forever. So for right there, we've lowered our energy usage, so we've done a little bit better for the environment, even though we're doing more actual work. We went landfill free in 2010. So everything in our facility that could arguably be trash is either recycled or goes to a trash to steam facility. Does two things. It makes us landfill free, which is good for the environment, and we get paid for our trash as opposed to having paid to get our trash removed. It's a nice little benefit. We don't get paid a lot, but you take an expense into a minor profit, and it's fun. So we do that. We recycle all of the water we use, enough water to fill about 15 Olympic-sized swimming pools every year. We recycle all the plastic we use right at the press, about 1 million pounds a year, enough to make 500,000 to 1 million Connect sets a year. So we're doing all those things, but it helps drive our bottom line and helps our own local community in terms of the larger carbon footprint, because we have a smaller environmental impact than we ever had before. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing, and we look for those kinds of incremental improvements every year.
But that's where people have a disconnect sometimes. I don't think they realize there's always critics of those types of business practices who say, well, but there's a cheaper way to do it. Why would you make the effort to make those moves with your business when it's got to be costing you along the way? But it's not costing Connex. Connex has been moving steadily up in terms of revenue and in all of its major categories. So tell us about that. Why is it what do you say to people who ask you why you work so hard to follow through on this?
Sure. What I have found in my experience, and people's experiences may be slightly different, is that there's a huge difference between price and cost. The cheapest price is always usually the highest cost, but it's usually over some period of time. So you have to figure out, is that period of time worth it to you? For example, theoretically, we could go all solar there today. But the payback on the solar today is 30 years. So although that's better for the environment, that we're not doing. So we're doing things that we can get paid back within a 3-year period. So that's sort of the realm we've done. So every business is a little bit different. And so you look at, what is your investment period? If you need to return that second, yeah, you're right. Then you might as well get your trash picked up and have it paid for and not worry about it. But we find in manufacturing that every time we pick off one of these, the benefits that we saw going in happen, and there are always other hidden benefits with almost never hidden costs that we didn't even see before. So for example, the hidden benefit of going landfill free was that our morale went up because people felt a little bit prouder about being at a place that was different from everybody else and every other manufacturer they knew, that we don't throw out our trash anymore. It all goes somewhere and helps generate energy. In addition to that, from a business standpoint, it helped us generate some positive PR for environmental sources. So imagine I'm getting called by an environmental person to do PR about a manufacturer. It doesn't make any sense, right? Because theoretically, plastic's bad for the environment, except We're good for the environment. So it's all those hidden benefits that we didn't see going in that happen. Plus the cost savings. The cost savings is there, but it's over time. So you've got to look at, is it going to return in 3 months or 3 years or 5 years, and decide, can you wait that long? Some businesses can't. We happen to believe that even if it's a little longer than we estimate, it tends to be worth it. And so I wouldn't tell anybody to say you got to do all the things we do in a day, but I would say do the one that feels the rightest to you at your organization. See how that goes after a year or two. And then add another one, and then add another one, and add another one. And the second, third, and fourth one to add are easier than the first one. Because as habits start to change, people start to do little things like here, people leave their offices and they just turn the lights off like you would at home. 3 years ago, nobody did that because they were just used to being in an office and the lights are always on. So it's all those little habits that just sort of